The latest nuclear test by Iran on October 5th has caused worries about the balance of power in the Middle East. This has made an already dangerous situation even more dangerous. The supposed nuclear test sent shockwaves around the world, both literally and politically. It raised the stakes in a world that was already very unstable and hinted at a change in the way alliances and power structures work. Recorded seismic action near Tehran has caused a lot of talk, with many people wondering if it's Iran's first nuclear test. Iran has said for a long time that its nuclear plans are completely peaceful. This possible success is making waves in both the military and the political community. If it turns out to be true, Iran's new nuclear power could change the way trade works, how security is handled, and the balance of power in the Middle East. If Iran did perform a nuclear test, it would show that its nuclear goals have changed from possible to actually possible. This ability would be a very important way for Israel to protect its security. It could also change the balance of power in an area where Israel faces nuclear-armed enemies and ongoing bans. Israel has always said that it is worried about Iran's possible nuclear power because it sees it as a direct threat to the security of the region. If the tremor really was a nuclear test, Israel might have to change how guarded it is, which could make things worse in the area. If this happened, Israel would have to rethink its plans because Iran would be right next door and have nuclear weapons. There are concerns about the fairness of the international reaction, since many people think Israel has nuclear weapons but is subject to much less inspection and criticism. Supporters of Iran say that after years of sanctions and outside meddling, a nuclear option would give Iran the freedom to express its right to be independent without worrying about interference from other countries. The International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, says that Iran's nuclear program is moving forward quickly. In early 2023, Iran reached uranium enrichment levels of 84%, which is just below the 90% level needed for weapons-grade material. It's clear that many of Iran's enemies are feeling very rushed because they are afraid that Iran might soon have enough material to make a nuclear bomb. American intelligence sources have even said that if Iran chose to go too far, it could make enough files for a bomb in less than 2 weeks. Iran's position is different. It is one of defense rather than attack. When Western countries criticize Iran's goals, they often don't talk about their own nuclear programs or military presence, which makes the situation more difficult and urgent. People worry about Iran's unique weaknesses because of its acts in the Middle East and its closeness to U.S. military bases. When the U.S. pulled out of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, in 2018, it broke Iran's nuclear program and slowed down political progress. Since then, Iran has increased its enrichment efforts and is now storing uranium at amounts that are much higher than what the JCP allows. If a nuclear bomb is made, Iran might have a straight way to stay safe in the long run. Iranian leaders say that any nuclear defense would be protective, not aggressive, because Iran's goal in having nuclear weapons isn't to expand, but to protect its territory against strong enemies. Targeted cyber attacks and high-profile murders in the past few months have shown Iran how unstable it is to depend on regular troops or shadow allies. Iran's nuclear equipment is becoming more spread out and protected, which makes it harder to plan a direct military strike in reaction. Now, Iran is focusing on building a strong barrier that would make it much less possible for any other country to start a war with Iran. With nuclear defense, Iran might be able to gain more power in the Persian Gulf, which is a very important geopolitical area. If Iran had nukes, it could control key ports and neighboring countries, especially the Strait of Hormuz, which is where almost 20% of the world's oil goes. Iran and the UAE have fought over land in the past, including the islands of Greater Tumb, Lester Tunb, and Abu Musa. With nuclear defense, Iran could strengthen its control over these areas, increase its power over the Strait of Hormuz, build up its military, and make a wall around itself that would keep both Western and regional countries from getting involved. Some experts say that a regional security framework with a nuclear-armed Iran could make the area less reliant on outside help and more balanced. Iran may be able to control marine traffic in the Gulf, which could give it the power to get political agreements from countries that depend on these trade lines. In real life, an alliance in the region led by Iran and other Gulf states could focus on fighting radical threats protecting trade lines and settling border issues without having to rely on other countries. Some people might say that this strategy gives Iran too much power, but it's also possible that an alliance like this would bring security to an area that has often been used as a chessboard by world powers. Iran's nuclear threat could change the balance of power and influence in the Gulf area in a big way. With nuclear security, Iran would not only have more freedom, but it would also urge its neighbors in the Gulf to put regional peace first. This change in Iran's power could affect other areas and countries nearby, making it a strong country that can change the rules all over the Middle East. It would be easy to see that Iran has strong links with IIA groups in Sunni-majority Gulf states. Shia communities in Bahrain and eastern Saudi Arabia might see Iran as a protector. They would be sure of themselves enough to fight for their rights, question the status quo, and speak out in ways that upset the balance of power in these countries. There's a chance that Iran could change Gulf politics in its favor without firing a single rocket or sending a single force. Just having a threat could be enough. It has always been hard for Iran to get along with the Kurds, but now that it has nuclear security, Iran could play a more subtle game instead of just pushing back. As a way to balance out the power of other countries in the area, like Turkey, Iran could carefully help or control Kurdish groups in Iraq, Turkey, Syria, and Turkey. With nuclear power, Iran could dance a political tango, using its power and backing to keep its enemies on their toes. With its nuclear weapons, Iran is right in the middle of some of the world's most important geopolitical passageways that connect the Middle East to Central Asia and Europe. Iran could protect these lines as if they were its own limits. If Japan, South Korea, and Europe, which all rely on oil from the Gulf, knew that keeping good relations with Iran was now a must, they wouldn't have to threaten. They would just know that messing with Iran means putting their energy supply at risk. If Iran had nuclear weapons, it would be the best way to keep the area stable. However, neighboring countries, especially the smaller Gulf states, would think twice before doing anything that could provoke Iran, because they would know that Iran has a much better way to respond. Declaring, "We're here, we're strong, and we're not to be trifled with nuclear weapons would keep countries in line without making war more likely. When it comes to Iran, the West is not trying to attack. Instead, they are using nuclear weapons as a line in the sand that no one wants to cross. With this level of safety, Iran can focus on investing in its own peace instead of spreading itself too thinly across the area. Nuclear security is the strongest thing that can stop countries like the US or Israel from attacking, so they think twice before taking a chance. When Iran's enemies realize that it has switched from its old policy of conflict to a strong defensive stance, they will be less likely to do things that could cause trouble. Instead of Iran having to keep up with every fight in the region, the country would be free to focus on its own problems without having to constantly move its nuclear shield into position. Iran doesn't have to show that it is strong. It already has the proof that it can make or has already made nuclear bombs. The Western world thinks that everyone has the right to protect themselves, but it's not really fair. In their dream world, they own all the buildings and banks and make the rules. Self-defense is their only club. And any country that has the nerve to put its own rights first is an outcast that will never fit in with the West. If things went their way, Iran would only be able to defend itself by sending 3 copies of very strong letters to the UN. When Western politicians use words like peace and stability, they mean that they are in charge of other countries and can't do anything about it. For the West, the only right it will protect is its own, and the chosen few get to choose to use nuclear weapons. People in the West think that the only way for other countries to defend themselves is to give up. They don't have the right to defend themselves. They are set on staying locked up behind closed doors and acting like it's for the best of everyone. What a terrible one-sided movie the West would make if they got their way. They would be the heroes and everyone else would be the threat.